How much time are you having with your client? How many sessions are you having with your client? How many times do you need to have a session with your client? These are all the questions that a lot of therapists have come to me saying that they have to see the client so many times because of their technique, that they are needing to go through the 12 emotions. I'm not going to go through each emotion, but what happens with your client when they have a random emotion, they're in shock. You know, what is shock? If they're dealing with grief and it was a grief that happened instantly, whether it happened traumatically like a death or an injury, and their body is in shock, how do you deal with that as a client? So a lot of the roadblocks that my students have had was, what do? They can't find a script. They can use maybe audios. They might find something that's so relatable. But what if you don't need to find anything? And if you're stumped in this situation in the middle of a session and you don't know what to do, you don't want to look like a fool. You don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing. So you're scrambling at other things to do. You might not know what to say, how to react. And then you'll say, okay, well, you're upset. Let's do another session next week. And so you put it off until you do some more research on how to handle it, and you ask questions with other therapists, and that's fine. But what it is that you're asking for more structure, for more techniques. If you just laid out yourself with just being natural and not having to prepare, that will set you in a place of no stress. You don't have anything to come from. You don't have anywhere to go to. So why not just be in the moment and really be inquisitive and be really nurturing when you're asking the conversation? When you're in doing a session using Advanced Conversational Therapy, ACT, you actually become more aware of what your client is going through. You don't have to understand the emotions because they're going to go through the emotions. They're going to go through sadness themselves. They're going to go through maybe laughter, frustrated. Let them deal with it. Let them deal with it all in that session. Don't wait for the next session and the next session. And don't feel like you have to put pressure on yourselves. What most of the students find is they really don't know what to do in the middle of a session. If you're not having to worry about what technique that you need to utilize and have it all laid out, I'll just use NLP, I'll just use EFT, I'll just use CBT, you'll just use all of those initials or all of those modalities and structures, but really with being understood and understanding your client. You don't need any of the techniques. What I've found with my sessions is that you, the therapist that is really conscious of your client's words, really conscious of how they're feeling, and putting it on to them and finding out what that means for your client. Giving them assumption of what you think is the problem, giving them more labels to put on themselves. They're probably labeling themselves to whatever the problem is. It's not your job. It is not your job to do any of that, to figure anything out. All your job is, as a therapist, when you're using ACT, is to be present, to really find out what that means for them, find out what the resources they can use, not telling them what resources they should be doing. That is not our job. Our job is to just find out what the problem is and what it means for them with the problem. A lot of the questions that we use in ACT is really getting the clients to think and bring up an awareness in themselves about what it is. And when you do that, you actually become more in tune with yourself as a therapist. You utilize your own intuition. That is so much more important as a therapist, to use your own intuition. And it might sound woohoo, but it is channeling with your client's energy. It is really being in that space with your client, because you actually use your intuition to ask the next question. You use your own intuition that might be using a question that no one else has asked them before. When you are using questions that no one has asked them before, that can be quite confronting, but it also means that you're being honest with your client. And a lot of therapists are, really conscious of not stepping over the line, or maybe I might not ask the question because I might hurt their feelings. No, sometimes you need to ask the questions that are going to get your client to really think about the problem in a deep way, in a really deep and unconscious way. So use your intuition.